Hey guys, and welcome back to Battlefront Updates. In this video I wanted to give you an update on everything we currently know about Star Wars games coming out in the future, as well as the current state of Star Wars games in general. I'll be mainly going over games that we know are in the works, but also content coming to games that are already released, such as Battlefront 2 and Star Wars The Old Republic. I'll also have a very brief section at the end of the video regarding mobile Star Wars games, as I know some of you might be interested in those, and if you're not, you can simply skip that section. So in 2013, EA got the exclusive rights for Star Wars games through a 10-year deal with Disney, and I think we all hope to get plenty of Star Wars games due to EA's vast resources, but unfortunately, 5 years later, all we have gotten is 2 AAA Star Wars games through Battlefront 1 and 2. And to clarify here, they only have the exclusive license to HD games, meaning that there's multiple publishers, including EA of course, that has released mobile Star Wars games. As for Battlefront 1 and 2, they obviously came with their ups and downs. The first one was released and blew everyone's mind in terms of graphical fidelity and accuracy to the movies, but did instead lack a lot of content at launch and was stuck with a season pass that split the community. Everyone was obviously hopeful for Battlefront 2, a game that contained roughly 3 times the amount of content of the first game and ticked off almost all requests from the first game, but was unfortunately coupled with a horrendous progression system tied straight into microtransactions, which caused what I would argue the worst launch of a game I've ever seen, at least from a PR standpoint. The game was then fixed with a good progression system and microtransactions for cosmetics only. Unfortunately, the damage was already done, and repairing the reputation after that kind of launch is not very easy to do, and the game has since then suffered from lackluster post-launch content and a lot of bugs from a seemingly small development team. But the question is, how does the future of Star Wars games look, and what can we expect in the coming months and years? Well, let's get started. Starting off, I wanted to briefly mention what I think is the oldest Star Wars game that is still being supported today, which is Star Wars The Old Republic, the MMORPG that was released almost 7 years ago. The game is still getting continuous updates, and in their summer roadmap they announced PvP updates coming out during the summer, as well as some content coming in fall 2018, such as a completely new storyline and adventures that will continue into the next year. We don't have any specifics on that or how long this game will be supported, but judging by the roadmap, it will be supported at least throughout the entire year of 2018 and probably beyond. Moving on to Battlefront 2. In June, they announced some of the future content planned for the game and later released a roadmap detailing when roughly it will be arriving. The announcement included some heroes that have been requested for years to arrive in Battlefront, including Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, General Grievous and Count Dooku. They also confirmed that a large-scale non-linear game mode where you will be capturing command posts, just like in the original Battlefront games, will be arriving to the game, together with a new squad system so that you can play easier with friends. Lastly, they also announced that Geonosis will be coming to Battlefront 2 with multiple levels. All this content will be spread out from fall to winter 2018, meaning that some content could even spill over to early 2019. Other than this content, we don't know if there will be any more content in 2019 and for how long they are planning to support the game. They promised a live service for years to come, so if they were to cut support after 2018, that would be very disappointing for the still fairly large player base playing the game. But now moving on to the brand new games that are planned to be released in the coming years. The closest one to be released is Respawn Entertainment's new single-player action-adventure third-person game titled Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. They announced the title of the game, its setting, as well as the release window last month at EA Play. The game will be released in holiday 2019, so that's still more than a year away from this point. The official setting of the game is that it's an original Star Wars story around a surviving Padawan set shortly after the events of Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Other than that, we don't have a whole lot of concrete details about the game, but there are still some things we can guess based on its placement in the timeline and so on. It's very likely that it's going to be a brand new Padawan that we don't know of so far, and some people even guessed Kanan, but his story is already covered in the last Padawan book and does not fit into the timeline. Matt Martin from Lucasfilm did also confirm out on Twitter that future issues of the Darth Vader comic will be hinting towards the game, so that's something to look out for in the coming months and year. I will of course cover any potential hints that shows up there on the channel as well. Gameplay wise, all we really know is that lightsaber combat will most likely be involved, as in the initial announcement teaser back in 2016 we could see 2 people motion capping a lightsaber battle for the game. So who could this Padawan be fighting in the game? Vader is not too likely, as he would probably just wreck the Padawan in 2 seconds, but the Inquisitors are likely enemies, as there's still multiple of them we know exist but haven't seen in any canon content yet. The only single player experience that Respawn has previously released was the campaign to Titanfall 2, so if you want an idea of their previous work, I'd recommend playing through that campaign, although I find it very unlikely that there will be a lot of similarities between that campaign and Fallen Order, since they are set in completely different universes. If you're interested in more Fallen Order speculation, I will link that in the description of the video as well. The next and only other Star Wars game we know is currently in development is an open world game developed by Motive Studios over in Vancouver. This game uses assets from Visceral's single player Star Wars game that was cancelled last year and was led by Amy Hennig. I'm not going to go too much into detail about Visceral's Star Wars game, but you will see the few shots we have of the game on the screen right now, and if you want to read more about the game and why it was cancelled, I can highly recommend this Kotaku article that gives us a good idea to why EA decided to cancel the game and what happened behind the scenes. But moving back to the open world Star Wars game being led by Jade Raymond, we don't have a ton of details. Since Visceral Games was shut down a little less than a year ago, this game has most likely not been in development for that long, although using a lot of assets from Visceral's game could still save them a lot of time. My guess is that the game will be released in 2020 the earliest, and that we might get our first glimpse next year. In a recent interview, Raymond said that the current team has a lot of experienced developers from different franchises, and one of the most noteworthy ones she brought up was Sleeping Dogs, as that was a successful open world game, and to have developers that worked on that game on the new Star Wars game is good news. When she was asked about how much they will be keeping from Visceral's game, she said the following: "I don't know how much we're saying about that stuff, but the goal is we have 3 terabytes of Star Wars artwork, which is crazy, and there is a lot of really good work there. When we announced we were moving the game, the idea was pivoting more into player agency, but still keeping a lot of the stuff that was great about it. There was a lot of really cool stuff, like tons of assets and really cool characters that had been created, so there's the goal of making sure we use all that. Based off that, it seems like the core story will be completely different from what Visceral was developing, and it's more about reusing the assets that they created, such as characters, objects, and so on. Personally, I'm glad that we're getting 1 linear single-player story game and 1 open-world game, as opposed to 2 linear single-player games. The problem is of course that this game could also get cancelled if we are unlucky, as it seems like it's still in a very early stage where they aren't really sure where to take it. Having Jade Raymond lead the game, who is incredibly experienced after working 10 years at Ubisoft, at least gives me a bit of confidence in the project, and I really hope that this is a game that will see the light of day in the coming years. But those are all the non-mobile Star Wars games that are currently being supported or are planned to be released in the coming years. There could still be projects in the works that we don't know of, and I hope that is the case, as otherwise the wait for new Star Wars games will be fairly long. Moving on, we have mobile Star Wars games, which has actually had quite a lot of games released in the last few years, some of which are still supported. I'm not going to go through all the games, as there's been everything from fully fledged mobile Star Wars games to Angry Birds Star Wars games, but in terms of noteworthy games still being supported, we have Galaxy of Heroes, which is probably the most successful one so far. Star Wars Force Arena is another mobile game that is still getting constant updates, but beyond already existing games, they've also announced Star Wars Rise to Power, a strategy game where you can rise through the ranks of different factions, and the game has gone through a closed alpha testing, but no release date has so far been announced. But that should give you an idea of the Star Wars games that are currently being supported, as well as which Star Wars games that are planned for the coming years. My main hope is that no more games will get cancelled, and that both Respawn's and Motive's games will be released as planned and be as good as we all hope for. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe for all things Star Wars gaming news, and feedback on the video is always welcome. I might do more of these in the future once we know more details about the various games, and if that's something you're interested in, let me know. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, may the Force be with you.
We're